All right, share my screen. If you have questions or you don't understand something I am doing, you need to stop me, okay? Whether you get off your microphone, whether you do it in the chat, okay? Some way, shape, or form, please stop me and let me know that you don't understand something. Okay, so here is where we are at. Most people did really, really, really well on question 1 or question 2 here. Technically, it's item 2. So I didn't really have, I think this one is one that we could almost skip. I'm going to do it really quick just to kind of get our brains moving, give you guys a chance to get situated. And then we will, I'm going to change this so I can see more people. Change layout. Okay. All right. So I am going to work through this one. Last week, was it last? I think it was last week. It might have been the week before. We did like a domain and range reteach. That was my intention, was to get you ready for that portion of the test. If you are in second period or first period, today we're going to talk about inverses. And then if you're in sixth period, today you're going to work on the translations, the transformations. And then we'll flip-flop tomorrow. Okay, so you're ready for Wednesday. You can always go back to the review materials for the last test too and redo those. Okay, that's a really good idea. I also put a bonus assignment out there that should help as well. Okay, so that's another way to get some extra points. So take advantage of those. All right, so I am going to plug in. So help me out in the chat. I know there's fewer of you here, but you could help me in the chat. If I am going to plug in -3, is that going to go into the top branch or the bottom branch? So tell me in the chat what you think. All right, good job. I'm seeing a lot of top branch. Okay, so good way to start. So we're going to go ahead and plug that -3 in there. So we get -3 squared minus 3. -3 squared is 9, minus 3 is 6. Okay. All right, and then also as you're going through your test, look at the points. There should be some points listed to the side somewhere. Make sure you've got 50 out of 50, okay? That's how you can tell if you got it wrong. Sometimes the red and the green aren't working because I'm not as good at putting the test in yet. We will get there. All right, equal to 3 looks like it's also the top branch. So I'm going to do 3 squared minus 3, which would be 9 minus 3, which again is 6. F of 0 is also less than 3, so I'm still in the top branch. 0 squared minus 3 is going to be -3. All right, and then I'm going to put in the 4. 4 is the only one that's true in the bottom branch. So I get 4 plus 2, which is 6 in the bottom branch. I purposely put the 0 in the middle there so that it did not look like 6, 6, 6. So I was aware of that when I was doing the test. All right. That was item 2. I think item 2, pretty much everybody was successful on. Okay. It was where after item 2, kind of after item 3, that's where things started going haywire. Okay. All right. So we've got the crazy graphs. All right. And we're going to see some more of these crazy graphs when we do in-class stuff. You've seen a few more of them when you did hopefully the the review of it last week. So use the graphs above to answer the question. Please, please, please. I had a lot of people make this mistake. It even tells us, watch what graph it is asking for. So make sure you know if you're using the F graph or the G graph. Okay, write it on your paper. There's not a ton of work that you have to write down on these. Write it on your paper. Okay, state the values where F is decreasing. So I'm looking on the F graph, so I know I'm doing this graph here. Okay, I am going to ignore this graph completely and not do anything off of that graph. Okay, and I'm going to go decreasing. So I got to go everywhere where it's going down. So I'm just going to, and I know you can't trace it digitally. Okay, I get that. It's tougher to do these digitally. You can't write on top of them. But we are supposed to be using interval notation. So interval notation, and this is the biggest mistake I saw in interval notation, is how you were doing your opens and your closes. A lot of people would put that one as open. It's actually closed because it's solid right here. It's not an only time we do open is when you have an open circle or you have an arrow. Okay, those are the open and you use parentheses, okay, or less thans, right? If it's a closed dot or a solid line, it's closed, and you use the bracket or the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay. All right, so decreasing. So I'm starting at -3, and I'm going all the way until I hit the x value of 0. So make sure you're listing the x's and not the y's when we do these. And that one's a parentheses because you have an open dot. You can, I only taught it as a comma. Since then, we have come back and we have learned that there's a symbol called the union symbol. So you can use either one. Okay, I will accept both answers. My next set of decreasing starts at x equals 3. Okay, so you guys tell me in the chat, at x equals 3, should I have a bracket or a parentheses? What are you guys thinking? Bracket or parentheses? Just type one or the other. Okay. I like how we made the attempt to spell it out. All right, it is a bracket. We could have just hit the button on the keyboard, right? Which is right next to the letter P. But we've got a bracket. Mine does not look very brackety, does it? Okay, and then it's gonna all the way end at 5, and 5 is an open circle, so it should be a parentheses. Okay? If you're looking at this and you're going back to some of the old material, that it would only be graded with a comma. So if you're trying to do like the grade yourself one, it's going to be a comma. Okay. All right. Let's go to item 4. All right. So the biggest mistake on this one was not understanding the concept of putting one into the other. It was the algebraic piece once you got it put in. Most of you understood that I'm supposed to take this g function and substitute it into f. Is what you did with it after that to get this simplified. That was the problem. So I'm going to write the notation f of g of x. I'm going to write my f function, but instead of writing the x, I write parentheses. We all did okay on that piece. I'm going to put my g function in there. And some of you got that far, and you may have gotten like 30 out of 50. Okay. And I don't know if this was one. There was one that was grading it right when it was supposed to be wrong. So you it may look green and it's actually not. So again, look at the points. So what do I have to do? Tell me in the chat, what do I have to do with that part that's squared? What algebraic process do I need to apply? All right, Itzel is on it. She got it. We have to FOIL that, okay? So whenever I see this squared, it's not this, okay? It's not that. You can't just distribute that in. If it said this, 2x, then, or squared, right? Then I can distribute it in. Do you see the difference, how this is multiplication, whereas this is addition, subtraction? So when it's addition, subtraction, I have to FOIL. It means write it twice. So x minus 2 times x minus 2, and then I'm dropping down that minus 3. All right, we're going to FOIL that out. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. I have another one of those in the middle. And then negative 2 times negative is positive 4. Go ahead.
Your presentation went away.
It went away. Thank you. I hit a button. It's been doing that lately. I'll go back, okay? I will go back to where I was. I will start FOIL over. How's that sound? Okay. Oh boy. Erase, erase, erase. Okay. I think I might be dragging my hand in a weird space thing on my screen, and it makes it go away. Okay. Either that or Google's having issues. All right, so we've got x minus 2 times x minus 2 minus 3. We know we have to FOIL that. Again, it means this means write it twice. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Negative 2 times x is another negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 2 is 4 minus 3. All right. We've got negative 2 and negative 2 in the middle, which would give me negative 4x. And then 4 and negative 3 is positive 1. at this point where we are at, I would expect you to simplify it like that, okay? You will not get full credit for just leaving it there, all right? So you need to get to, this is the full 100% credit. We're also kind of reviewing that Algebra 1 skill of FOIL in here. It's kind of a sneaky way to get it in. The next unit we do, beyond the absolute values, we're going to get into quadratics, so it's a good skill that you need to have going into that, okay? All right, let's see how many more we can get through in the next like 10 minutes. Okay, so let me tell you the biggest problems I saw with this one, okay? Number one, so tell me in the chat, what does the negative mean it should look like? What should the picture look like if it's negative? Okay, I see the word down. I like the word down. It should be upside down, right? It should definitely be going this direction, okay? So that was the one thing, is a lot of people, you got your vertex right, and then you messed that part up. You didn't turn it upside down, okay? The other place where things went wrong is you just totally messed up the vertex point. I saw a lot of people switch X's and Y's. I saw people, it was this one here that was the biggest mistake, is not moving that the correct direction. So I always, always, always write down, this is the work you could show on your paper. Write down the vertex point. So my vertex point, I am out 1. Remember, you do opposite sign on the inside there. So I'm going to be out +1, and then this one you keep the sign. You're going to go up 3. So we're going to go out 1 and up 3. I am going to count that from this first gray dot and from the second gray dot, out 1, up 3. And then it should let you, it should automatically, you hit this little parabola button and you plot that one, it will automatically sketch a parabola there for you, okay? Oh, and I forgot to do what? Go upside down, didn't I? All right, so if I started like that, I could take and I could move it, okay? But I could also take and drag this dot. I know I want that dot to go down, so I'm going to make it go down. So the purple one is the actual answer, okay? So the green one is the halfway point, right? This is the one that's correct. And today is more about, if you're in 6th period, it's more about the translation, and 1st period will do that tomorrow, than the reflection. So what could we write for the work on the paper? What I would do on the paper, Cole, is I would do a sloppy graph, right? So, okay, I know I've got to go, there's a parabola, and I know I've got to write it out, out 1, up 3. You could write your vertex point down, maybe do your initial sketch, and then go, oh, whoops, I know it's got to go upside down. Now I know I've done my thinking on my paper, and then I could put the final on the computer. Okay, good question though. And it's tough. There was a homework assignment like that too, right, where there wasn't a lot of work on the paper. But again, you can always write out that vertex point. This is the biggest thing, is getting that right. Once you have that right, even though it's not a lot of work, you're at least showing me and demonstrating to me your thinking. Because don't forget, you want to write work out, because if I can give partial credit back, and the goal is to get that grade up, you want those partial points. Okay, I kind of give you, like, out of 50 points, there's 10 for making a good attempt at the problem. And then after that, so that's kind of the consolation prize if you only get 10 points, okay? But after that, if you want it, you should be getting about at least 30, if not all 50, okay? So you should need to show me significant work and thinking. And that gets you at least 30 out of the 50 points, okay? All right, here we go. Item 6. Okay, so we need to, 2 things are very important. Okay, we need to know what type of notation we are using, which is inequality. Okay, and then we need to know which graph we are working with. It looks like it's F. So I'm not worrying about anything over here. I had a lot of people list 2 answers. Okay, I had some people not use the correct notation. So you want to make sure you're using the correct notation. All right, what do the words, tell me in the chat, average rate of change mean? All right, I've got Cole saying slope. Hopefully we all agree with him. So I am looking, this is a fancy way of saying, where is the slope equal to 1? Okay, so I'm going to look at my graph and I'm going to find where the slope is equal to 1. There's only one interval in the F graph where that is happening. It has to be going up 1 over 1, right? This is the only interval right in here where that is happening. Okay, so I'm going to do inequality notation. I only use my x values, so my first x value is -6. And then my second x value is -3. And then we know, because it's solid in there, there's no hole, that I have to use the less than or equal to. And then tell me in the chat, what letter goes in between there? What do I have to put in the middle of the sandwich? There we go. Good job. It's x. The only time it's not x is when it says range. Is the only time you're going to use y. Okay? Other than that, you always 100% of the time use x. When you're using inequality notation, this is the exact way it should look every time. So inequality notation should have that part in the middle the same way every single time. I did have people doing some crazy things. Okay, so just be careful with your inequality notation. All right, I think more interval than inequality, didn't I? Because I know which one goes better. And I might be doing it a little differently this time. There might be more like drop downs where you have to fill in the blank on the drop down. Okay, we'll see. I'm playing with new question types. All right, this one was crazy. I had a little bit of all kinds of weirdness on this one. All right, so if I'm going to find the inverse of a function, what's the first thing I need to do? Put it in the chat and tell me. All right, I've got Itzel, I've got Cole saying switch the x and the y. Awesome, good job. So that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So there's my y. All right, the f of x is like y. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch the x and the y. Now I want to solve the y, and it was definitely order. I think we understood the switching part. It was order of operations that killed us, okay? So you're going to reverse your order of operations. I got to get y by itself. The first thing I do to get this has to get isolated, is I have to get rid of this. To get rid of that, I need to multiply both sides by 3. So I get 3x equals the square root of y plus 2. To undo the square root, I have to square both sides. Notice I use parentheses on the left. So this is kind of different than what we were doing earlier when we FOILed. This time I do distribute this. So I really have 3 squared x squared equals y plus 2. And 3 squared x squared would be 9x squared equals y plus 2. Could have probably done this in the same step. I'm going to subtract the 2 from the other side. So 9x squared minus 2 equals y. And then we want to write it in fancy inverse notation. So f inverse is the same as y, 9x squared minus 2. Give you a minute to catch up. Okay, we are looking at number 8. Number 8 went pretty well for most of us, okay? So we're going to just talk about the transformations super fast. We'll see how far we can get. if we don't get to the last few, we're doing a lot of this stuff in the domain, the range. We're doing a lot of the inverse stuff in class today. So for first period and tomorrow for second period. So if we miss it, it's okay, we'll catch it up. All right, so first thing I would do on item 8, and again, your numbers might be different than mine, but is I'm going to identify the vertex. The vertex, I change the sign in the parentheses, I keep the sign on the outside. So that means that I'm using this value as my movement. So I know I am translating to the left 4 and down 3. Okay. Tell me in the chat, what's going on with, what kind of translation is just the inside? So tell me what the inside translation is. I'm not worried about the 1/3 yet. Tell me what's going on with the inside. How is it moving? Up, right, left, down, left, right, up, down, right? All right, good job. We've got a couple people saying right. Technically, the vertex on this one would be 1, 0 because we were technically adding 0. And again, you want to go opposite. So it's translating right 1. This part here out front does the stretch or compression. So when it's between 0 and 1, so if it's between 0 to 1, that is a vertical compression. If it's bigger than 1, right, it's a vertical stretch. And we're not worried about negative because negative makes it go upside down, right? So this one would have been a vertical compression. It's going to squish it. When you're compressed, you squish something. All right, negative would be a reflection, and I'm only ever going to give you the x-axis, in or across x-axis. All right, let's talk about this one here. So what do you guys think? What's the 2 out front do? Tell me what the 2 out front does first. Put it in the chat. It does multiply everything by 2. In terms of what the graph looks like, what does it do? Think about what we talked about right in here. There we go. Okay, so we've got a vertical stretch. And I'm not going to mess. We talked about horizontal stretches. I'm not messing with that stuff on the test. It's vertical or nothing. Okay, so it's going to be a vertical stretch. And it's going to translate. And it translates. And remember, we have to change the sign. So this would be a -4, 0 vertex. So it translates to the left 4. All right, help me out with this last one. How's that -3 going to move it? Move stretch, compression, up, down, left, right. Matthew says down. Do we agree with him? Oh, we've got down. It says even more. So down -3. Technically, this is just a technicality, okay? When you say the word down, you don't need the negative on it, okay? So because the down indicates the direction and takes care of the negative sign, but that's me being really picky, okay? So we would say translation down 3, okay? All right, let's see if we can do 1 or 2 more before I kick y'all out to start first period, where we'll have more fun together, right? Okay. Using interval notation and the graphs below, find the domain of G. Okay, so the first thing you want to figure out is what kind of notation, and then what graph are you using? We're using G, which means I'm not looking at X at all. We're going to get rid of X. All right, so domain, tell me in the chat, is that the X values or the Y values? Good job. We've got X values. Okay, so I'm going to look at my smallest X value on the graph. I always start on the left. So my smallest X value is at -8, and we have a bracket. Okay, And then my biggest x value, I'm going to keep going until I hit my biggest x value, which is 9. And I'm going to have a parentheses because it is open. Okay. All right, let's see if we can do a couple more. All right, this one says using interval notation and the graph. We did G twice, huh? Oh, it's because of the way it came up. Some of them were G and some of them were F. And I'm going to do G. So I'm getting rid of this one and I'm doing this one. So your question on the test, when you go to correct it, it might have been the F graph, okay? It just depends on how it came up. So some of them were G, some of them were F. All right, so I am starting the if x's were the domain, then y's have to be the range, and I start at the very bottom. I'm noticing my y value here is -8, and it's closed, so I would use a bracket. And I'm going to keep going up until I hit my very last y value. My very last y value looks like it's 4, and since that's open, I would use a parentheses. And again, not a ton of work, right? It's you're gonna write for your work, you would write the whatchamacallit, you'd write the interval. When you go to do your test corrections, I think I say you have to explain why you got it wrong, okay? So analyze what the right answer is and explain why you got it wrong. All right, let's see if we can squeeze in another one here. Okay, so here's the crazy ones. And some of us did really well, and some of us just needed some more time and some help on this, okay? So if there's no exponents, so if there's no -1s, that means that we're inputting x values, okay? If there's -1s up there, so if it looks like F inverse or G inverse, your inputs, that says inputs, are y values. Okay. So my problem says I'm going to put in the x value of -8 at G. So I'm going to go to my G graph. I'm going to go to -8, add x, and I'm going to read off the y value, which also happens to be -8. Notice how I substituted this in for it. So I substituted the -8 in for the G of -8 because that's what I calculated. All right, so this is saying take this and put x value and plug it into F. So I'm going to go to -8 on the F graph. I'm going to read off the y value, which is 2. Again, there's not hardly any work to show because all the work is in your head or you're scribbling it on the graph, okay? You guys tell me, I need your opinion. Because I can get it, so if you wanted to print off the graphs ahead of time, I could do that. So would it be helpful to be able to print off the graphs to scribble on them? Tell me just yes or no in the chat, or it doesn't matter one way or the other. Yeah? Okay. I will see if I can have graphs ready for you guys for tomorrow so that you can print them off, because it is hard to have it on the screen. And literally, I used the same set of graphs the entire test, right? So if you guys had those, then it would be better. Okay, we will work on that, okay? I purposely made the graphs separate, so that way you didn't have the F graph on top of the G graph, because that gets ugly. So I remember that in years past being ugly on a test, but we will try to make it so you can print them. Okay. If I was at school, if we were at school, I would print them and just hand them to you, right? Can't do that right now. All right, so I have an inverse. So based on what I said, on the inverse graph, so what is that? Is my input an x value or a y value? Tell me in the chat. All right, I'm liking the y's. Good job. Okay, so I'm going to go to my F graph and that y value. So I'm going to the y value of 0 and I'm finding the x value. So the x value right there happens to be 4. So I'm going to substitute in 4 for that y value. Now this here doesn't have an inverse, so this is now an x value. So I'm going to go to the x value of 4, okay, and I'm going to on the G graph though. Right, it's the G graph. So I'm going to go to the x value of 4 on the G graph and read off the y value, which is -1. All right, we've only got like one left, so we're going to squeeze it in. Okay, and then we'll give us just enough time to go get breakfast, right, before first period. I ate mine just before you guys came in. Okay, this is the weird one where it's like the function composed with itself, okay? It happens once in a while where we have this. So again, we've got inverses, so those are y inputs. I'm going to go to where y is equal to -3 on the g graph. So -3 on the y. I'm going to read the x value off, which is -1. Okay. Again, I have an inverse, so that means this is a y value. So I'm going to go where the y value is -1. I'm going to erase my scribbles. Okay. And I am going to read off the x value, which looks like 4. Okay, so just be careful. Again, watch which graph. Be very careful about the notation it gives you and which graph you are using. Okay. Does anybody, hopefully this was helpful. Okay, does anybody have any questions? I appreciate you all getting up half an hour early. Okay, because I know class doesn't start till 9:15. Okay. All right. If you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat or come off your microphone. If not, you guys can go ahead and go get your breakfasts. Get ready to do some more review here in class. Okay, you're welcome, guys. I hope it helped. You're welcome. You're welcome, David. I'm glad it helped. You're welcome, Genesis. I'm glad it helped.